Hey everyone, Tuesday, 11 a.m. It's Eastern, and it's time for Hiring with Hutto. Mark Hutto here. Our focus today is on something that is going to be game changing for any recruiter, recruiting professional, TA leader. It's called the Quintessence methodology, and it's really, really cool. I think you'll find that as the feedback I've been given over the years when I developed it back in my corporate days over 15 years ago. It is the antidote or the preventative for hiring manager noise or dissatisfaction. So can't wait to dive into that with you. But first, let me introduce my wingman, MC, master of ceremonies, Justin Maharana. We call him Lil Sauce here at Reveal. So Justin.
Thank you, as always, Mark, for the great introduction. Welcome, everyone. Really excited to have everyone here again for another Hiring with Hutto session. Before we get started, if you have not, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn. Mark has 25 years of experience in talent acquisition, and he loves to give his knowledge away. So we share content on both those platforms on a weekly basis for you all. And then Mark will be walking through a document today. And if you would like it, in the spirit of sharing, just email us at givemethegoods@revealglobal.com, and we'll be happy to share it your way. Like Mark said, I will be doing air traffic control, monitoring the chat. So if you do have questions, please send them our way, and I'll bring them to Mark's attention so he could answer. And we look forward to having you on this session of Hiring with Hutto. So without further ado, Mark, please take us away on the Quintessence methodology.
So let me give you the little story as a bit of a tease. This is something that, like I said, I authored it or whatever over probably 17 years ago, something like that. But about, 5 years ago or so, I'm on a joint consulting engagement with my colleague, Brandy Hirschbach, and a friend and a titan in our field, Carmen Hudson. And if you know Carmen Hudson, she knows good, better, and best. And she's extremely bright. She's got her company, recruiterhunt.com. She's a part of Recruiting Toolbox, works with John Velastalica and Matt Grove and the crew there. But anyway, Carmen and Brandy and I are meeting with this head of talent acquisition for a number of days in Calgary. It's an energy company. And the head of talent acquisition was talking about hiring manager noise and how it's so difficult to manage it and how to get to the core of it. And so for her, I laid out just spontaneously, I should say, just went to the whiteboard and said, let me tell you about this Quintessence methodology. I think it could really help. And after I explained it to her, Carmen was like, man, that's gold. That is strong stuff. Excellent. And the head of TAs said, that's excellent as well. So what I'll do is talk to you about how this works at the individual level, like with a hiring manager at the end of an intake meeting, and then how a TA leader can use it from a strategy perspective as well for their entire organization. But let's start with the individual explanation and use case for this. So quintessence, the term, is defined as the 5 essential, hence the term quintessence, the 5 essential KPIs for any recruiter, recruiting organization, recruiting firm, corporate recruiting team. So the 5 are quality, quantity, cost, speed, and diversity. I would also fit candidate experience and hiring manager experience into quality also. But quality, I'll just quickly mention these and I'll go into some deeper detail about this. But quality is the quality of the talent that you're presenting or the quality of the experience. Quantity, that's too many, too few candidates in the process. Cost, pretty self-explanatory. Speed, we'll get into some detail on that. And then diversity can be what it sounds like, which is about identity groups, or it could be something a little different. But the way this works is, and I'm going to share this document with you. At the end of the intake meeting, the idea here is to start moving into a conversation to avoid this kind of a statement happening later in the process. Let me blow this up a little bit more. There we go. So I'm not seeing enough good candidates as quickly as I thought I would, or some version of that, right? The ambiguity here is what kills you. So I'm not seeing enough, that's quantity, good candidates, that's quality, as quickly as I thought I would. Any version of that from a hiring manager, if they think it, if they speak it, or if they write it to you, it's almost a little too late for this. So you want to do this on the front end at the end of the intake meeting. And the way this document is laid out, it's like a quasi role play of sorts, right? So it comes down into the sample dialogue here. And it's a pretty short document, 3 pages, and I'll show you and really kind of role play this for you throughout this LinkedIn Live event today. But the way this initiates at the end of the intake meeting is you've had the conversation about the qualifications, the education experience, all that, location that the candidate needs to be located, et cetera. And then, so at the end of that, you say, okay, hiring manager, in this case, we'll use the name Catherine. Catherine, understand what we're looking for in the candidate. Now let's talk about how you might want to hold me accountable. And there are 5 factors that most recruiting firms and recruiting professionals like myself are ultimately held accountable to. And those are the quality of the process, quantity, speed, cost, diversity. And so I want to know from your perspective, just hearing those 5, which one is, I know they're all important to you, but let me just ask you to force rank them and tell me which one is the most important right out of the gate for you. And at some point in the process, they're going to, as they're prioritizing or defining them, you're going to, if you're seeing them face to face, you're going to watch them look up to the ceiling and say, well, I don't know, I hadn't thought about this yet. Anytime you hear that, you just avoided a complaint, because they're going to think about it eventually, and it's going to be their opinion against yours, and then it's too late. So on the front end, you lay these out, you ask them to prioritize them, and a best practice tip here, it's so simple, but it makes the difference, is number them when you lay them out. Let me tell you about these 5 factors. Number 1 is quality. Number 2 is quantity, and so on. And then as they're giving you their top priority, let's say it was cost, for instance. Okay, I've got cost. Now there's 4 left: quality, quantity, speed, and diversity. Which one is second on the list for you? And let's say the hiring manager said diversity. Okay, and then let's get the other 3 prioritized. As long as you get the first 2 or 3, you don't really necessarily need to press them to prioritize the remaining ones. But you feed that back to them and say, okay, now that I know that it's cost and then diversity and then quality and quantity and then speed, let's define each of those. So cost, let's talk about cost for a minute. So I'm not saying, hiring manager, that there's a dollar or anything we need to spend on this search. If we found ourselves in that position later on, at what dollar amount do you start to get concerned? You want to find out what that ceiling looks like for them. If it's, we got to spend a few $100s on job postings, or maybe more to sponsor them and amplify them, or we have to bring in a search firm and we're talking $20,000, $30,000. Lay those out and see how they react to them. So what you're doing is compelling them to think through their hot buttons, right? So what dollar amounts start to get them concerned, but you want to do that before the temperature's turned up on the conversation. So you capture that, and then you move on to diversity in this example. So you said diversity was second important to you. So what identity groups are we focused on? So what identity groups are we focused on in terms of, let me stop sharing this. So what identity groups are we focused on, or are we thinking diversity is is it diversity of thought or diversity of experience or something else other than identity groups? So let them define that. And then you move on to define, let's say, quality next. So quality, I think, hiring manager, we just define that from the standpoint of what's necessary for the person to be qualified for the role. So it's the quality of the talent. You might also think about quality of the experience for the candidate and for you. But is there any other way that you want to hold me accountable as it relates to quality? Let them exhaust their thinking on that. And then when you move to quantity and speed, quantity, you're going to ask them about, there's such a thing as too many resumes, such a thing as too few final candidates, or too many final candidates. What's the right number look like for you in terms of quantity? And again, you're having them, you'll hear them think it through for the first time probably. And then when you get to speed, that's another one that has multiple choice sort of a feel to it. So hiring manager, I know that the time that transpires between today and the day we get this job filled is important to you, obviously. But how do you want to hold me accountable for speed? Is it today until the job is filled, or is it until the first resume or the first candidate submitted or the first phone screen or the first interview? Where do you want to hold me accountable on that, on those milestones? And let them talk about that. Usually it comes down to when the offer is made or accepted. So you feed all that back to them. Okay, the priorities I heard are as follows. And then you defined each one of these as follows. Is there anything else you want to hold me accountable for? And you are, if you're in front of them, you're writing it down so they see that. If you're on the phone with them, tell them you're writing it down because it's important, and you want to feed it back to them after the meeting. So after the meeting, you recap that and say, that we reached an agreement on how you want to hold me accountable. Send it to them in an email, and then keep it in front of them with each update where it becomes appropriate. So if you're delivering a candidate, you might reference the quality of the candidate. You might reference, as it relates to those 5 factors, you might reference the speed. Hey, looks like we're doing really well to hit our goal on when we get the offer accepted. So that's you want to do that along the way, because if you come back later, if they were to complain about something, and then you say, well, wait a minute, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, we agreed on this, and here it is again. You don't want to rub their nose in it, right? You just want to keep them apprised of, this is going well, we're doing good, this is what you said you wanted, and we're doing it. So keep that in front of them in that way. The other thing I'll share with you, this was a real life story that was really memorable about how this unfolded with a hiring manager. I was delivering training to a very large bank in London years ago, 5-6 years ago. And Ian was in the group, and Ian said, hey, I've got an intake meeting. He called it a strategy meeting tomorrow with the head of legal for the following different parts of the bank. He needs to hire 4 attorneys, or solicitors. So we go to meet with him the next day, and he wanted me to, take this portion of the intake and get these 5 quintessence factors defined. And so we go through it, and the gentleman that was the hiring manager said, when we got to speed, he said, yeah, that's going to be pretty important. I said, well, you've got 4 positions, and how long do you, if you want to hold us accountable for the point at which the offers are accepted, how many days, months do you think are appropriate for us to hit that goal? And he said, I think 30 days is reasonable. And Ian and I certainly felt like it's not going to work. So we let him discover why it wouldn't work. So I said to him, all right, well, how many interviewers will there be? And he said, well, there's 4, including me. And we were actually in an open floor plan, and he pointed to him and named them. And I said, and if you have 2 to 3 candidates as finalists for each of these very different attorney roles, you're probably talking about collectively about 40, 45, maybe as many as 48 interviews. So considering your schedule and theirs, do any of them have holiday or mandatory leave, which is necessary in banking and pharmaceutical in the UK? And he said, yeah, 30 days isn't going to work, is it? And I said, I don't think so. And he said, I think 90 is probably a better goal. And the key is he's the one that brought it up. I didn't have to say it. I mean, and so another way of positioning this is, you don't want to prescribe to them what our norm is and so forth, unless your TA leader has set a goal for the organization. Our enterprise-wide speed goal or cost goal or whatever is as follows. If that person has set that as the strategy piece for the organization, then you might want to align to that and say, well, our corporate goal is that okay with you, or do you think it should be different? But the point is, you're just getting things defined before the process gets started. So that's it. That's the Quintessence methodology. Really strong consultative experience for the hiring manager. Justin, I'll just check in with you. Any questions?
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. And we do have a question from Grace. She wants to know how you would handle a hiring manager that says all 5 factors are equally important and doesn't want to have that conversation on the front end.
It happens a lot, Grace. Good question. And I think it comes from the standpoint of not really wanting to think it through very carefully. They might just be running short on time, something like that. Could be both of those. But I would say if you can get the first one, two, maybe three factors defined, and you might say to them, okay, I understand we're short on time, and that they're all important to you. But if you think about in the past where you've been disappointed or elated with the service you got from a talent acquisition professional, which one of those five comes to mind for you first and foremost? Quality of the candidates. That's got to be it. Great. And how about speed or cost, diversity, quantity? Which one might come really close to that or almost even with it? And then, press it a little bit further. If they refuse to do it for whatever reason, I would say, okay, well then let me make some recommendations to you in writing separately after this meeting. And you want to mention in that note, we didn't reach agreement on the following metrics, but let me suggest the following, and then see if they'll react to that. But you just want to get something in writing between the two of you that says this is good and this is bad, along those five factors. Good question, Grace. Thanks. Justin, any others?
No, that was it from now. And thanks again for everyone joining this call. Again, we like to keep it at or around 15 minutes because we understand your time is valuable and you guys have a lot to do. So if you want more information, go ahead and email us at givemethegoods@revealglobal.com to get the document. And Mark would be happy to jump on a meeting with you in the near future to discuss anything in detail. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn, where we share content on a weekly basis aimed to help you with hiring and recruitment for your organization. Mark, any closing thoughts?
Come get the goods. Just shoot us a note. We'll be happy to share. Have a great week, everyone. Cheers.